It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. It's hard to believe, but this week marks 4 months since the devastating wildfires that destroyed the Pacific Palisades and Altadena. And there has been rebuilding, there has been debris removal, but a lot of it is not moving nearly fast enough, despite what Karen Bass wants to tell you. And there's still so many questions that need to be answered about not only how this fire started, which who knows if we're ever going to get that answer. We kind of have an idea about the Eaton fire, SoCal Edison, with outdated, de-energized towers that could also spark if they get hit by something. Allegedly. We're not 100% sure, but we have no idea, or they haven't told us how the fire started in the Palisades. Heck, we still don't know how the 10 freeway melted. But another question that we haven't really seen an answer for outside of the big reservoir and why was it supposed to be repaired and then they just never got to it was also the lack of water in the fire hydrants. How was it that when homeowners were trying to fight this fire themselves, all the water ran out? What happened? Well, ABC 7 did a deep dive. Let's see if they uncovered anything.
4 months after the Palisades fire, shock has turned to anger. Where was the water needed for the battle of fire? 7 on Your Side investigates. And welcome back. I'm David Ono in for Mark Brown.
I'm Michelle Fisher. Thousands of homes were lost in the Palisades fire. And you heard it came to the point where there was no water coming out of the hydrants to put out the flames.
So why did the hydrants run dry? Eyewitness News reporter Josh Haskell is here now with the latest as 7 on Your Side investigates. Josh?
And David, I feel like the investigations from local news move a lot faster than the investigations from the government, who might have something to hide, whether it be incompetence or negligence.
And David and Michelle, as you know, we've been in the Palisades every week since the fire. And on every visit, I've been approached by residents asking how in a city as expensive to live in as Los Angeles, there was a shortage of water to fight the Palisades fire. Misinformation surrounding the water issue hasn't helped. Here's what we found.
They're out of water. It does feel helpless when you're watching it burn and there's just nothing you can do.
The water was shut.
It's still so hard to hear these things. You know, I wasn't directly affected by this, but it just breaks your heart to hear what happened. And yeah, it was a really horrific day, a couple of days, and the winds were something that we have not seen, but there has to be a better answer than, well, there's nothing we could have done.
You can do.
The water was shut down.
The water's all off, so you can't go there. I was bucketing out of my jacuzzi in a pool across the way.
Desperate scenes played out in Pacific Palisades on January 7th, 8th, and 9th as residents watched their homes burn and firefighters told them there was nothing they could do because they had no water. When the fire broke out around 10:30 in the morning on January 7th, Tom Dorn and his family didn't leave, choosing to stay behind and try to save their home. But he says at 9:30 p.m., the hose he was using to put out a hotspot near his garage ran dry. His home burned to the ground a few hours later.
It's just heartbreaking and so infuriating. He tried to do everything he could, and the water just ran out.
We were forced out by lack of resources. It didn't need to happen. It shouldn't have happened. Dozens of friends lost their homes up here. And
think about how much people pay to live there. You would assume that the infrastructure would be prepared for something like this, considering that we know how devastating and often these wildfires are. The Palisades was on fire just a few years ago.
Here. And that, it's a crime.
Through a public records request, Eyewitness News obtained this email from LAFD Public Information Officer Eric Scott on January 9th to top officials in the department, writing in part, "We are experiencing challenges with water pressure while battling the Pacific Palisades fire." But in multiple interviews with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, officials maintain they never ran out of water.
Of course, because Janice Quinones is paid $750,000 a year to not make Karen Bass look bad.
The problem, they say, was that demand reached 4 times the normal use.
We had plenty of water. Our system.
There she is, Karen Bass's exclusive hire, someone that she refuses to fire and who got a 50% pay raise, although we'll play the sound later. She told Alex Michelson, hey, you should be grateful. She took a pay cut to come here. What the hell was she making and why?
We had plenty of water. Our system was working as designed. We were above code requirements, and we have more water than required by the fire code.
We believe that our system.
Yeah, nobody's buying that.
We believe that our system performed above and beyond what the requirements of any municipal system would be. It's not designed for wildfire, protection.
According to LADWP,
Then shouldn't we redesign the system or, I don't know, rethink living in places like that?
According to LADWP, Los Angeles has a single water system, meaning the water supplied to your home is the same water that feeds fire hydrants. The system is designed to put out house fires, not multiple neighborhoods on fire at the same time. Here's how the Palisades gets water. The 36-inch Westgate trunk line runs from the Stone Canyon Reservoir in Bel Air along Sunset Boulevard to the Palisades. Pump stations move the water from the trunk line to higher elevations in the Palisades, including 3 1-million-gallon tanks and the 117-million-gallon Santa Ynez Reservoir.
Oh, you mean the one that was bone dry and empty because the lid was faulty and they never replaced it and the work order just kind of fell behind. But DWP doing a fantastic job. Janice Quinones doing a fantastic job, has earned every penny of that $750K.
Which has been out of service for over a year. On January 7th, the Marquez Knowles tank in the Palisades ran dry just hours into the fire at 4:45 p.m. Then at 8:30 p.m., the trailer tank in the Palisades Highlands ran dry. And by 3 in the morning on January 8th, the Temescal tank was empty.
And where was Karen Bass this whole time? Partying up in Ghana or getting on a plane. Very embarrassed.
We had a lot of different hydrants being used simultaneously. And also the fact that certain properties, they left the water running to saturate the area.
And when a structure is destroyed, water is just flowing. There's no way to control it. So imagine having a straw having 4,800 holes and you're trying to push the water to the end point. You just can't get the water to it.
It took 2 days before LADWP crews could get back into the Palisades to turn off the water at the homes that had burned. Attorney Roger Bailey is suing the LADWP on behalf of more than 750 Palisades residents.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm totally in support of that. You know they're just going to pass on whatever lawsuits they have to pay out to the customers, to the ratepayers, because that's how this always works, whether it's a privately owned monopoly utility or a public utility. The ratepayers get screwed in the end by incompetence. And where was my say as an LADWP ratepayer? Well, to be fair, my wife pays the DWP bill, but I pay other things. But my household is a DWP customer. Where was my say in Karen Bass giving a $750,000 salary to Janice Quinones when the previous guy made $350K?
The water supply system in the Palisades was not maintained properly, it wasn't repaired properly, and that left firefighters with the inability to use the resources they so desperately needed. Some people say, well, all the water in the world wouldn't have made a difference. We know that several property owners, including Rick Caruso, had his own private firefighting team.
And they protected a lot of homes, and they protected that shopping center, and his stuff didn't run out of water with private stuff. This can be designed better. It's 2025, but they don't want to admit failure. So to say that the system worked as intended when so many homes burned down is insulting. If that's how the system worked as intended, then whoever designed the system is a moron.
That had water and resources and were able to save several structures.
A centerpiece of Bailey's case is the Santa Ynez Reservoir located in the hills of Pacific Palisades.
By the way, that reservoir still empty today. The incompetence of LADWP, the city of Los Angeles, and the state of California knows no ends.
Which has been offline since January 2024 because of repairs to its cover. Numerous investigations are underway, including one ordered by Governor Newsom, into why the reservoir was out of service and what difference it would have made in fighting the fire. Retired LADWP General Manager Marty Adams tells Eyewitness News he doesn't believe the reservoir would have saved the Palisades, but it could have helped.
Any amount of water is good. Any amount of water would help the situation.
But Bailey and retired LAFD Battalion Chief Mike Castillo, who is assisting the legal team, says there's no doubt the reservoir would have boosted the water supply.
I defy anybody to explain to me how having an extra 117 million gallons of water was inconsequential.
Because they don't want anyone to look bad. They want to somehow be completely blameless for this disaster and blame it all on climate change.
I've fought many fires, commercial fires. We've had some low water pressure, but in those instances, the DWP at our request was able to boost the pressure, and I've never had an instance in the city of LA where I've ran out of water. Something went wrong.
The hurricane-force winds in the Palisades grounded air support the evening of January 7th, but Castillo, who worked the Skirball and Getty fires also in the Santa Monica Mountains, says firefighters on the ground are trained to put out embers that land in neighborhoods during a wind-driven fire.
That puts 100% of the firefight on the ground resources that need the tools to do their job, such as water.
Holy oh, boy.
I mean, dude, we did the best we could.
For Tom Doran,
these poor firefighters put their lives literally on the line, risk their health, and we failed them, and we failed all the residents of that neighborhood.
Everything. I mean, dude, we did the best we could.
For Tom Doran, shock has turned to anger.
One fire engine at the top of the block at 10:30 when we came back around, but it was just parked up there. There was no water. They couldn't do anything.
There's my house. Gone.
Now, the Palisades has 1,000 fire hydrants. LADWP says they found out after the fire from the LAFD, whose job it is to inspect those hydrants, that roughly 12 of those in the Palisades needed repairs. It's unclear whether the damaged hydrants played a role in the water pressure issues.
Well, you think they could have. And by the way, LAFD sent that report to DWP, and DWP didn't do a damn thing with it, and then said, after KCAL put in a request, oh, we had no request for damaged hydrants, which we know is BS because these things get damaged every day by things like the homeless.
We reached out to the LAFD for an interview, but they were not able to make someone available.
So we still don't really have a clear answer as to why there was no water in the hydrants, but there definitely looks to be a lot of incompetence at the LADWP. There's also allegations, by the way, that the fire got so much worse in the Palisades because while we don't know how it was originally sparked, it possibly could have had a second start by some blown over LADWP cables. What do you know? Our aging, awful electric infrastructure could be to blame yet again, as we know it is for the Eaton fire, most likely. As we knew it was for several other fires, including the Signal fire, including the Woolsey fire, which, by the way, a judge just allowed SoCal Edison to pass off all the costs they had to pay for those settlements to ratepayers. These utilities are incompetent and they're corrupt. And is anybody getting fired over this? Well, when we come back, that question was asked to Karen Bass by Alex Michelson at a panel at the Milken Institute this week. We'll see if Janice Quinones gets to keep her $750,000 job next. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. The DWP says everything worked as intended when there was no water in the fire hydrants. There's no explanation for why the reservoir was empty and is still empty today. Is that Janice Quinones, who Karen Bass appointed to $750,000, keeping her job? Alex Michelson asked Karen Bass this question this week at the Milken Institute.
Are you satisfied with the performance of the LADWP? There's been a lot of questions about Janice Quinones, who's making over $700,000 a year.
These salaries are insane.
Do you think that
you want to work in public service? You should have to make a public salary. It is totally insane that the average wage of someone that works in LA City is about $60,000 a year, and city councilmen make $220K.
Do you think that she did a good job, and should she continue in that job?
Well, I certainly would not sit here and say she shouldn't continue in her job.
Really? You fired the fire chief for quote unquote incompetence, or was it because she spoke out against you and that was retaliation? And that lawsuit's a coming. And you know the city of LA loves to settle a lawsuit.
But the issue with the DWP actually is the DWP and the fire department as well. So one of the big issues was the reservoir and the fact that the reservoir was empty. The reservoir was empty. It was not a reservoir. Well, it was a reservoir for drinking water. So it was covered. And the problem was there was a tear in the cover. And so the state ordered it to be empty and closed. And it hadn't been finished in time.
In time, they hadn't even started. It was closed in January of 2024. This was January of 2025. So that thing sat bone dry for over a year, and maybe that's something you would have paid attention to, but no.
The other
had to go to Ghana.
The other issue that overlaps with...
Not that she would know specifically what's going on with reservoirs, but wouldn't that be telling of the competence of the person that you put in charge of DWP?
The other issue that overlaps with the fire department were the fire hydrants. Right. And there is a lot of evaluation and reporting that we need to do to fix that as well. So the way it is done now is that the fire department essentially inspects the fire hydrants, and then they give the information over to the DWP, and the DWP then repairs them. That information was not received. And so that...
Was it that it wasn't received or it wasn't read? Because if there's a lack of communication between departments in the city, that seems like a structural problem with how the mayor runs the city. Or the mayor's out to lunch, too busy worrying about international issues like the freaking inauguration of the president of Ghana.
And so that was a problem on the fire department. But the issue I would raise is, why do we even do it that way? And so I think that we have to take the lessons from this tragedy to figure out how we strengthen all of our systems, and most notably the emergency management department as well as the fire department, both of those.
But you understand how some people see that job performance maybe not meriting $750,000. That's more than you make. That's more than you make.
Yeah, but let me just say that the DWP is the nation's largest utility.
So?
And if you compare our utility to Omaha, Nebraska, where the salary was around the same.
If that's true, that's a gross overpayment as well.
A small town, I mean, a big town maybe in Nebraska, but small compared to Los Angeles. And so to me, I want to get the best talent around the nation. And we did a national search, and that's what it took. She took a significant pay cut to come to work for Los Angeles.
Wow.
Oh, aren't we so lucky? We're so lucky. Janice Quinones took a pay cut to come to the LADWP and make double what the last head made. Wow. We're so lucky.
Good for I guess I'm in the wrong line of work. So what? Well, that's the pay cut. We know that
they don't even blink an eye with these bloated, insane salaries. Do you wonder why the city's broke?
We know that the fire chief was fired. Are there more to come? Is there anybody else that you think should be held accountable for what happened here?
Yeah, I think that there are a number of people that should be held accountable, and we're in the process of doing that. The fire chief, I had to release her for her response.
You mean because she said that you cut the budget and it made you look bad?
Which I think has been well documented, the fact that 1,000 firefighters...
Also because of civil service protection, she couldn't actually fire her, so she just got reassigned?
...were sent home that could have been on duty. The fact that fire engines were idle that could have been in use.
You mean the ones that were broken because there were no mechanics because you cut the budget for the mechanics? This stuff isn't very hard to research, Karen Bass.
And several other weaknesses that happened there.
So more people, it sounds like, will be losing their jobs.
Well, it is possible. It is possible because you know that there are investigations that are underway.
Yeah. And when are we going to get the results of those investigations?
I think we're probably a couple of months away still. However, the governor has an investigation on the fire department, and that's probably several months away.
There's a lot of...
You know, just acting with the most urgency to find out what went wrong here. We're only, a few months away from the next fire season when something devastating could happen? And do we have any lessons learned at this point? I don't know. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC. 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. It has now been 4 months since the start of the devastating wildfires that destroyed the Pacific Palisades and Altadena, and we're still looking for answers to a whole lot of questions, including what the hell happened with the fire hydrants, how come you fire the fire chief and not Janice Quinones of the LADWP, and all the other failings that led to the most destruction we've ever seen in Los Angeles. Hey, let's go to the phones, and first we'll go to Ronnie in beautiful Seal Beach. Ronnie, hello.
Hey, Randy, my buddy, what's going on?
Doing great.
Hey, Randy, how come, I have so much respect for Karen Bass, and she did the right thing and just stepped down. Her lying and deceiving and blaming and referring all the problems to somebody else is just so gross. She knows she's wrong. We know she's wrong. It's so pathetic. It's nauseating. And I know most of those people in the Palisades are probably Democrat. I would imagine 80% of them. And I bet they would have wished they voted for Rick Caruso. And here's what I want to say. These people don't give a damn about you or me or anybody else. They're going to do it over and over again. Look at 4 months and they still don't have any water. This is going to continue forever. And people's lives are wasting away, they're going to do it, and they're going to keep. And these checks, these exorbitant checks. My God, what the hell is wrong with everybody? I don't get it.
It doesn't make any sense that we have to pay someone that much money and they can't even explain something simple like where was the water. Ronnie, thank you so much for the call, buddy. Appreciate it.
Hi, buddy.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Rose in Marina Del Rey. Rose, hello.
Hey, Randy. Did Mayor Bass say that the person who runs the equivalent of the DWP in Omaha, Nebraska, makes more than Quinones?
That's what she alleged.
No. He makes $210,000. I just looked it up. His name
so
is
she's full of crap.
She's full of, well, we already know that, but she's really full of crap on this because his name is Stubbe, Stubbe. Do not make a snide comment, okay? And it says he makes $210,000 because it's called the Department of Public Works there. What is she talking about?
Yeah, that didn't seem like it passed the smell test when she's like, oh, the guy in Omaha makes $750,000.
Okay,
yeah, I don't think so.
Warren Buffett would be down the street with a pitchfork if that were the case, because that's where he's from. And nobody makes that much money running the equivalent DWP in Omaha, Nebraska, more than Quinones. That's ridiculous. Where did she come up with this stuff? She really thinks we're very uneducated and gullible. That's what I think she thinks of us. And it's really...
Well, not only that, look at her appointee for the LA Homeless Services Authority, Dr. Valicia Adams Kellum, who also got a 100% raise, making $425,000 a year. And we just found out through whistleblower lawsuits that she's incredibly corrupt and was covering for Karen Bass and hiding the real numbers from Inside Safe, among a whole bunch of other corruption, including wanting vendors to pay for an open bar at the Christmas party.
I mean, Randy, where do these salaries, where do they come from? It's crazy. I tell people back east this stuff, and they think we're out of our mind out here, paying these people this much money. It grows on trees, I guess, because the taxpayers just keep putting up with it. And they keep voting the same people in office. And don't forget that Lhasa woman, she gave her husband $2 million in the nonprofit that he runs in Santa Monica.
You're totally right. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the corruption going on there. But no, you're right. There's no oversight. So we don't really have any check on why we're paying these exorbitant salaries for people that don't know what they're doing, like Barbara Ferrer at LA County. Rose, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. It's just one of those days where you need to vent about all the failures of the fires. Let's go to Bill in La Cañada. Bill, hello.
Hey, Randy, you might have heard that two of the plaintiffs suing LADWP are judges whose houses burned down in the Palisades. So that should tell you something about the seriousness. That if judges who are presumably elected are suing, a public agency, and with 1,000 broken fire hydrants not fixed, if this were a private company that committed this kind of negligence, the CEO and probably the idiots that approved the CEO would be facing criminal charges like fraud and negligence that could land them in prison. And along those lines, instead of penalizing the residents with legal fees and passing higher rates, let's get our buddy Nathan Hochman to look at the same premise that got the unelected school police chief in Uvalde, Texas arrested, which is endangering children by failing to do his job. In California, again, that's Penal Code 273AA, knowingly endangering children. I'm not kidding. There were a lot of kids in the Palisades that were endangered by this, and somebody knew the fire hydrants didn't work. I'd say whoever did that, not only should they be fired, they should be facing prison time. And just to be fair, I don't think that Janice Quinones is evil, because I checked, and in order to be evil in California, you have to speak good English and have an IQ of at least 36.
Thanks for the call, Bill. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Joe in Santa Monica. Joe, hello.
Hey, hi, Randy. I've been... The initial question should be another important question. How did this fire get started? Who started this fire? I never hear anything about that. Like it's just been swept under the rug, or nobody wants to confront it, or don't they have people that can investigate this and let us know how the fire got started? I'm talking about.
They seem to always be really late to the answer of that question. We still don't know who was the person that lit the fire under the 10 freeway that caused all that kind of destruction. They seem to be really slow to give us that answer, which leads you to believe that they either still don't know, which has got to be tough at this point, or they do know, and it's something that's going to make Karen Bass look bad. If it's DWP, Karen Bass looks bad. If it's the homeless, Karen Bass looks really bad.
Right. Thank you, Randy.
Thanks so much for the call, Joe. Appreciate it. Look, there can be other starts to these fires as well, but those are the two most common for the ones that we see in Southern California. This isn't like Northern California where we have wild lightning. Typically, these fires are started by the homeless or by aging, destroyed utility equipment that all should have been underground years ago. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Let's go to Corey in L.A. Corey, hello.
Hey, how's it going? See, the DWP has been around long before Karen Bass even got in office, but everyone seems to want to blame her for this fire as if Rick Caruso could have done a better job. How about we just start with, hey, the weather was bad, somebody lit a fire, we don't know who it is, and she did the best she could with the resources that she had.
But she was in charge. She doesn't get any blame for the destruction or the fact that there wasn't water in that reservoir. I mean, she was the mayor for 2 years before this thing started.
Okay, she was mayor for 2 years, and there's departments that handle the water, like the water department, like the Department of Water and Power, and the firefighters, right? The department,
yes, and she appointed the head of the DWP that had no answer for this.
Say that again?
She appointed the head of the DWP at an exorbitant salary that had no answer for why that reservoir was empty.
Okay, she appointed someone. So why are we blaming her when she is going down the list and figuring out who did make the connection, who didn't do their job? So why are we blaming her for that?
Well, typically in local politics, the buck stops with the mayor. If there's a failure of leadership, that means there's a failure at the very top.
It's not a failure of leadership if someone doesn't do their job. It's not a failure of leadership. Someone didn't do their job. So the person who didn't do their job usually gets fired, kind of like Karen firing, or not even firing, but actually reassigning the chief of the fire department, right?
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that she tried to fire the fire chief, but she didn't try to fire or didn't even do anything to the DWP head, who had no answer for the reservoir being empty. She did nothing to her, and she's getting a $700,000 salary. And Karen Bass just went on the conference this week and said we should feel lucky for that.
There were over 1,000 fire hydrants that weren't working.
Yes, and that was the DWP not reading the report that was filed by the fire department. There's failure on both ends of that, but ultimately that shows if the departments aren't talking to each other, that's a chaotic environment from the mayor's office. The mayor also had a deputy mayor who's in charge of public safety that's on leave because it was calling in bomb threats.
Okay, now let's say everything is working, the hydrants are working, the reservoir was full, and we still had the fire. Then what? Then who do we blame?
Well, that's the thing. It's a hard thing to prove. Would it have been better? Would it have been not helpful at all? But the fact that we had all of these problems and you see the destruction and homeowners that were literally using their own hoses to put out fires and the water just shut off, there's a lot of people that say this is unacceptable and we can't have this again. If this is the system, how it was working as designed, then we got to redesign the whole system because there's no way that makes any sense.
I'm all for making the corrections, right? And I do feel bad that that this event had to happen for everything to come to light. But I don't believe that you just put all the blame on one person. I think that it's fair to say, hey, there was a lot of gaps that had to get filled. Again, she's only been the mayor, like you said, for 2 years, right? So she's been the mayor for 2 years. What about the mayor before that? Why didn't they correct all of this? You know what I mean?
He was incompetent too. Yeah, and she's not doing a great job on that either. But I appreciate the call, Corey. Let's call back anytime we're late for a break, and we'll have this discussion anytime. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. I want to appreciate that last call. I really appreciate when someone calls in and disagrees with what's being said. You don't hear a lot of that on talk radio the way that you used to, and we try to do it as respectfully as possible. And I want all opinions to flourish out here. I'm not infallible. I could be wrong in a whole lot of things. So I love that we had that discussion, and I hope we have more discussions like that in the future. So let's go to Armando. Armando, hello.
Hey, Randy, good to hear from you. Listen, I was wondering about the LA Marathon and where it starts from Los Angeles. Always goes through the richest part of town, used to end up in Santa Monica. Now it's ending up in Century City. But it runs through all these wealthy areas where they get all these improvements prior to the marathon. Why is it not run through East LA, South Los Angeles, and Northern Los Angeles? They need improvements. They need recognition. Why is the LA Marathon always going west? Why don't they just call it the Rich People's Marathon?
Well, I think some of the other parts of town that could use those improvements, city officials are afraid to work there because it's scary.
Oh, come on. That's like a weak answer. We put tons of money into this LA Marathon. 40 years, we can't go east, we can't go south, we can't go north. Because what? They're afraid?
Well, they don't want all the international tourists to see all the homelessness. Thanks so much for the call, Armando. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jose in West LA. Jose, hello.
Hey, man, how you doing? My thing is the investigations. Why do they need to take more than a month? How hard is it to just hey, what did you do? What happened? Okay, thanks very much. Hold you accountable.
Well, and that's the thing. The longer they take, the more that most people think they must be trying to hide something. And that doesn't look good. I mean, how much more investigating could you possibly do at this point, especially when everything's already been cleared out? So it's definitely a good question to be asking.
Science. It's not rocket science. You just ask, what happened? Thank you very much. Hold them accountable. That's it. It shouldn't take more than a couple of days.
You're totally right. Thanks so much for the call. And that's why I go back to the 10 freeway, which is now, 2.5 years ago? We still don't know. Remember, Gavin said it was definitely an arsonist, but we never caught anybody. It's almost like if they don't want to give you an answer, it's because the answer makes them look bad. Because a lot of people assumed it was probably a homeless encampment that started all those pallet fires. And that would make Gavin look bad and would make Karen Bass look bad and would get people questioning why we waste so much money on that. But that's another topic for another day. Hey, if you ever miss an episode of this show, go to kabc.com/newsblitz or search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. And I've been filling in for John Phillips all week, noon to 3. My last day for that is tomorrow, and then Johnny's back on Monday. But listen to some of those podcasts, including my interview with Tracy Park from Tuesday. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC.